Lord, offspring are a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. And blessed is someone whose quiver is full of them. There's no doubt that children are a blessing. Now, if you're new to parenting, like I know a couple of y'all are, there are going to be days when it is not going to feel like a blessing to have these children. You're like, why was I cursed with this child? Why did this child just destroy this room? I was gone for 5 seconds. Or why did they eat that thing? Or, just whatever. And it only gets better when they get into adolescence. Junior high is awesome. And high school has its challenges. And even when they get into early adulthood, lots of challenges. So and I'll tell you, just because I've experienced this, our kids, our youngest is a freshman in college. There will be nights when you will cry with your child as they cry themselves to sleep. You're like, this child will not stop crying. I don't know why. I've done all the things you typically do. Check the diaper, see if they're hungry, see if they're thirsty, move to a different room. Maybe they're hot, maybe they're cold. It doesn't matter. And they're just going to cry. And so you just hold them and you love them. You cry with them. They fall asleep. You dry off their little tears, dry off your big crocodile tears, and you go lay them down in their bed. And there's going to be nights like that. And there's also going to be days of immense joy. There's going to be times when you're going to be so proud of them. There's going to be something that they do that just astonishes you. And you'll be reminded, probably like we are, of how intelligent our kids are, how much smarter than us they really are, how much more skilled they are. And so you'll be reminded of the blessings in those times. So it'll be difficult at times, but it will be the greatest blessing ever. And there's something about becoming a parent that is unique to everything else about our lives and about humanity. I called my mom and dad one time and told them, this is a few years after, I think, into our first child, maybe it was our second, but I called them and I said, now I think I understand. Now I think I understand how much you loved me. Because before I had children, I didn't. I mean, I knew my parents loved me. I knew they loved me. But the depth of that love, I really had no concept of. I also had no concept of the depth of frustration. I also called my parents when my son was in junior high and said, I am so sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. She said, for what? I mean, I hadn't talked to her in a little while. For what? I said, I'm sorry for ever being a 7th grader. I am so sorry. Right? But something about being a parent, becoming a parent, is so different, and I think it's this one thing. Because when we become parents, we do something that only God does, and that is create life. There is something in the process of bringing a child into this world, this creating of life, that is very much connected to the character of God, and in that, we get to see also a little bit of a connection of what it's like to be God. And so when you think about, if you're a parent, and you think about your love for your children, all of that needs to pour into your idea of what it's like to be God. What it's like to be God who loves his children very, very much. And because of this great blessing and this great trial, it is also in its nature to be one of our greatest responsibilities is raising children. One of our greatest responsibilities. Because these children, Howard kind of mentioned it, these are the future. These are future adults. They're future teachers and policemen and firemen and EMS people. They're future mayors, future governors, maybe a future president in our midst. They're future doctors and future lawyers and future explorers and researchers who are going to find things that we never knew was possible, or things that we had been hoping for generations and generations and generations, and our children may be the ones who find it. Things like cures to cancer, or life on other planets, or who knows where it could go. But our children are likely to be those people. And so while this is a great responsibility, one of the other little aspects is that they're also our future moms and dads. Your children are our future moms and dads, and so the way that you raise them is a tremendous responsibility because it's going to affect how they raise the children that come after them and the children that come after them, and so on. So while children are a great reward and a great blessing, they're also a great responsibility, and so there's a question is, how can we best approach this great responsibility? And I want to give you two suggestions, and they're not going to be what you would expect from a preacher. Because I'm not going to tell you to have Bible studies with them. I'm not going to tell you to have family devotionals once a week. And I'm not going to tell you that you need to have your kids memorizing Scripture. Those are important, and those are good things, and if you do those things in your family, you will be blessed by them. But I think there's something even slightly more important than that, and it is this. Instead, I'm going to ask you to let them see you and to let them help you. To let them see you and to let them help you. We're not going to be judged on how much Bible we know. We're not going to be judged on how many Bible studies we've been to or how many verses that we can, recite from memory. Those are all good, but they're a means to an end. They are not the end itself. And so let me suggest a better way, that you let them see you and you let them help you. So let me give you an analogy. How do we teach children to drive? How do we teach children to drive? You ever had a child and you sit them on your lap and you let them do the wheel? We don't do it as much because of airbags and moving vehicles, but back when I was a kid, you just full off drive the car down the road, You'd be in Grandpa's lap. My grandmother, when we go visit my grandparents, used to take us out to the end of the road where my grandfather would be coming in from his tractor, coming in from the fields. And we'd go way out, maybe a mile or two, and we'd get to take turns. Today was my day, and I'd get to hop up on the tractor with Grandpa. Of course, he'd work all the pedals, and I got to turn the big wheel on the tractor and drive it back to the barn. And that was always so cool. But we do that. We let them sit on our lap sometimes and just turn the wheel a little bit. Maybe you've had a child. If you had a standard, you let them shift the gears for you. You'd push down the clutch and you tell them, all right, pull that down. You pull it down and you let the clutch back up, and maybe they were in gear, maybe they weren't, right? So you'd let them do that a few times. Maybe you had a riding lawnmower sometime in your life and you taught your kid how to ride that, and then they got to start helping. They drive the lawnmower around and they get to mow the lawn, and you're like, that's a big help. And then sometime later they do go to classes and they do study a book and they do memorize some things. And they go through a time when they have their learner's permit, right? They get their learner's permit, and then they get to drive you around like a chauffeur. It's pretty neat. And then there comes a day when they get their license and they're off on their own, and you send them on their own. But all of that has been preceded by them watching you and by them helping you. They watch how you behave behind the wheel. It's going to affect how they drive when they drive. So the way you react to different situations, the way you treat other drivers, the way you drive at all is going to come out in them when they start driving. If you tell them, and some of it's them learning too, because you're like, wow, you drive too fast. My wife's like, yeah, you drive too fast, and so they're picking up on my stuff. So after years, try to imagine this. What if that is not the way we taught people to drive? What if we just got a driver's education book and we sat down with our kid and we studied it over and over and over again, and we had them memorize things, and we talked about it every week, and they could quote back different laws and sign shapes and all that kind of stuff, and then one day we just threw them the keys. Here you go, have fun, right? It might look something like this Farmers commercial, just part of it.
And what if you didn't know that teen drivers are 4 times more likely to get into an accident?
Sup?
The more you know, the better you can plan for what's ahead. Talk to Farmers and get smarter about your insurance.
We are Farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, so that's what it could look like if you just spend time in a book studying and learning and memorizing, and then throw your kid the keys one day. That the driving is going to look like that on day one, right? So instead of doing that, what I propose is that we let them see you and we let them help you. And here's why. A few weeks ago, I referenced this scripture from Matthew chapter 25, and it goes like this. It'll be on the screen. Then the king will say to those on the right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or need clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" And the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. He's talking about humanity. He's talking about other people in our world. See, children need to see you feeding the poor and giving them something to drink. And then they need to help you feed the hungry and give them something to drink. Children need to see you giving clothes to those who don't have any, and children need to help you give clothes to those who don't have any. Children need to see you visiting the sick and visiting those, and they need to help you visit the sick and visit those in prison. All of those things, children need to see you do these things, and they need to help you do these things so that when they were old, it will become something that they are just familiar with. So parents, I encourage you, as you embark on this road of being a parent, of blessings and responsibility, cherish and love your children deeply. To know that there's going to be hard times, but to let them see you loving others and to let them help you in loving others. And that's the way that we'll raise kids who are good for our communities, who are good for our country, who are good for our whole world, but that our society will be better. It will be blessed if we raise children based on our example. And to do that, we've got to have an example for them to follow. All right? So that's my encouragement to you this morning and the challenge for this week and for, well, all of parenting, not just this week. Please do it beyond this week.